Great. So we have the final panel of the day. It's about values in the superchain. About 2-3 hours ago, we had a session about accelerating venture in the superchain. And a lot of these VC guys actually said, hey, that value, kind of what value are you representing, is one of the key differentiators between these chains. Maybe even more than the technical elements, the projects built on top. It kind of stems from what are you trying to accomplish, what values do you represent. So this final panel is going to dive deeper into that. I think you're not part of a soon-to-be OP chain, but you guys are, and you started as a project. I think maybe later decided, hey, I want to become a chain. So yeah, we want to have a discussion around that, especially after Vitalik's recent blog. Did you guys read his blog about the cultural diversity of L2s, kind of being the cultural diversity of Ethereum?
Skimmed it.
Skimmed it. Did you read it? Skimmed it. Did you read it? Should have skimmed it. Awesome. So who read the piece by Vitalik about L2s being the cultural diversity of skimmed it. Awesome. I actually skimmed it. So that gives us all a little bit of knowledge about what we're going to speak about, but I think we get the gist. It's like, and I think the superchain is realizing that. So let's start with a short introduction with one word as well. So who are you? But also one word or one value that represents your project the most.
Hi everyone, I'm Ryan. I'm co-founder at Cyber. Cyber is about social.
I'm Ian. I do partnerships, developer relations, and plenty of other things for Worldcoin. And I would say the one value that we're bringing to the Superchain is humans first.
I'm Alex. I'm co-founder at Charmverse. We are a grants management platform, supports cyber and optimism as well. And the one word would be builder.
Builder, nice. Awesome. I think a lot of values comes back to who you are as a person, kind of what shaped you. Why are you sitting here in this weird dark room with 20 people? I mean, we could have been doing other things with our life. So maybe a bit of a personal question, even kind of what values attracted you to the space and kept you around? What are some of the values you feel are critical for our thriving of humans?
I think I can answer this with a little bit of an anecdote. I grew up in Nashville, Tennessee. The music industry is huge there. I have a bunch of friends who are musicians, and seeing them make incredible art and still struggle to pay rent hurt me, and I hated that. And seeing how NFTs gave artists the ability to set better, more aligned incentive structures around their art, where if they sell something for, $100 and then it resells for $100,000, they can get a portion of that resale and be compensated for the value that they're bringing to their audience and their fans. That's something that I think is incredibly valuable, right? And I think that is what brought me to the space, and it's something that I advocate for a lot, in the debate about creator royalties and NFTs. I lost friends over people who said, oh, well, we shouldn't respect creator royalties. And you're totally losing the plot at this point.
Sure, I'll go. I'm one of two founders before Charmverse, started two companies before. And I think one big difference that I hope Web3 can bring is that being able to better distribute the rewards that comes in starting something. I think is not quite fair that only the founders and sort of reaps and the team with most of and the VC reaps the rewards of building something hopefully amazing. And I think blockchain gives us a chance to kind of redo some of these incentive alignments and actually try to let us rebuild the internet a little bit better this time.
Yeah, I would echo with that. I think just being fair is really, really important. I used to work at Instagram, and one of my role there was just trying to censor a lot of the creators and censor a lot of the data, whatever users are trying to do on there. Later on, I had the opportunity to work with PewDiePie, the largest streamer, on top of a crypto project that we built before Cyber, which was amazing. PewDiePie was kind of this platform by, or like canceled by a lot of the sponsors and YouTube. He decided to work with us as a, back at the time we were building a decentralized live streaming platform. And for him, it makes a ton of sense to be part of the owners, plus like everything that goes through the payments, never have like 90% taken away by the platform. And that's like why we are still building on the social / consumer / like content part of the crypto, where we want to make sure that people are making a living or like not extremely dependent on a platform, but rather than just like having their own creator, like the artworks and the stuff that like make a living out of it. Pretty much similar to what you guys just said.
Awesome. Yeah, I think it's really cool that we see comparable teams of kind of why you're sitting in this specific room. I hear fairness a lot. This is a term that when I got involved in the space like 7-8 years ago, fairness was definitely not top of mind. A kind of freedom was maybe top of mind, or autonomy, or so I think it's really cool to see that these values are shifting. I heard distribution, access, ownership. I think these are kind of common themes that we're rallying around. I had another question, which was gonna kind of suggest that you guys are very different in your kind of key focus or triggers, but it sounds actually that you guys are quite aligned actually. So maybe then to flip that question around, why do we need different chains if we all want the same thing?
There are many different manifestations of that same mission, right? And like of all the things that you mentioned, like freedom, autonomy, right? I think all of those sort of condense into being just, right? I think like fairness doesn't quite encapsulate it, but you know, in a system where everyone has freedom, right? In a permissionless system, a non-censorable system, you still build societal norms around that, right? That's, you can say that's what sets humans apart from, other animals, aside from the fact that we have opposable thumbs, right? But like building a sort of consensus around what you should do in an environment where there's no limits on what you can do is sort of what makes us move forward. But within that, like that is, when you have that sort of consensus of what we all should do, there's many different ways to take that and specialize it for so many different things, right? So for Worldchain, like when we say that we're going to be a humans first blockchain, that means for users we know are real humans, they will get prioritized transactions and gas subsidies to just remove those friction points that we've seen. That's not something that would work very well on a chain that's focused on, DeFi and trading and high transaction throughput in the same way. But both of those can absolutely fulfill those same values that we all share.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the case. I think the entire crypto has have a different layer of economy already, where building different chains will prioritize some, and will prioritize some kind of experience as well, like from the user side and the developer side. Whereas if everything fits under the one rent model, or like that's the gas model under Ethereum, or like one L2, it doesn't entirely help us get to where we want to be, because as you said, like everyone have very similar values, but like very different approaches to get there. And I think just together under Superchain, like everyone building some variant of that gets us there faster as a group of developers, rather than just like let's just jam everything on this one chain and makes that one chain like extremely scalable, but like every NFT mints create like 100 GWh of gas. Like just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, I'm in full agreement with both of you. I think a big part of it is culture, and then from the culture and that attract the different types of people that join the ecosystem, which then also have some technology differences in supporting that culture. But I think having something like a Superchain enabling you to have an aligned value but different culture, but then being able to interoperable, I think that kind of you get the best of both worlds.
You guys are deep. I love it. Let's. I think one common theme I'm hearing again is expressing these values to the real user, to the end user. You mentioned it really nicely, kind of what people can do, what we would like them to do. Specifically, I think from the three of you, I know most about Worldcoin, so more crypto Twitter knowledge. I don't, but I've experienced firsthand people being a bit worrisome about, for example, what Worldcoin was doing and kind of what's their intentions and what are they trying to do. How have you learned to better express your values and kind of align your actions to that to make people better understand what you're trying to do? Do you have some insights you can share with us?
It comes down to doing the work to help people understand how we've built our protocol, our hardware, our software, every single part of what we're building to be as privacy preserving as possible, right? And that's the main concern that you mention is that, with World ID, when you verify the orb, it's using biometrics to make sure that you're a real human who's only signed up once. And if you don't understand how we use zero-knowledge proofs to separate any action you perform with World ID from the identity of the person doing that, and how we use secure multi-party computation to store the iris code so that it's one of the most, if not the most secure system for storing biometric data in production in the world right now, right? We use all of these things, but to your average end user, they have no idea, right? And the claims that we make around privacy sound unbelievable without some amount of technical knowledge. So doing the work to help educate people on the tech enough so that they can understand what's actually happening is a big part of what I do at events day in and day out.
Nice. So what I think is great about this is that you are focusing on what you do well instead of trying to talk others down. I think that's a common kind of pattern in this optimism. Like, we're optimistic. We talk about what we can do and not about what others are not doing. I imagine if you're building a social chain, social network, people often compare you with others. What do you respond if people say, "Oh, you like Instagram"? What do you tell them?
Well, I think it's more about, for us, it's more about what can we enable developers to do, right? Like, so before we built the chain, we were already building a social graph protocol. People were comparing us to other social graph protocol, and then we're building a account abstraction wallet, Cyber Wallet, which is also one of the biggest account abstraction wallet out there, and people just compare it all the time. It doesn't really matter. Like I don't think it actually matters to that point. It's just like, who are you serving, and are they being served right? Like, are you seeing projects being built on your development platform, no matter it's L2 or what, but like, are they actually getting to where they are, where they want to be? And for us, right, like, we just launched our L2 a month and a half ago, the mainnet, and now we're hitting almost 10 million transactions, which is kind of great. And we have 3 apps that already hit more than 1 million transactions, which is awesome for us. So yeah, we're just trying to enable developers.
Nice. So you're essentially saying that because you enable the developers to get the experience that they're looking for, they can build the products that the end user actually wants. So you're sitting a little bit closer to the stack. Nice. Looking maybe at the wider Superchain, right? We have our values. We kind of commonly agree that these are the values that we represent, but we want to scale to 1 billion or even more than 1 billion users. What are some ways you think we can further express our values in a way that a larger audience can kind of get excited about them? And you're doing Charmverse, kind of, do you feel that if we kind of, what do we explain to people to make them as excited to kind of cross the chasm and participate in this industry? Or should we try to abstract everything away to the point that they don't even know that they're engaging with a Worldcoin or a Cyber or whatever?
Sure. Since we're not building a chain, we focus a lot on user experience, and how do we think about the. I mean, I think that, of course, the underlying technology is important, and of course that's part of why we're all building, because it's all these new things that we got to play with. But I think at the end of the day, is expressing that in terms of how can we make the user experience better and differentiated. That because aside from a lot of the committed builders in the space, that next billion users care a lot less about the tech, but care about what they can get, right? So I think it is difficult in areas like privacy, and that is hard to help people understand with a lot of the tech, or in other areas. I think it's about how do we highlight the differentiated capabilities without being super geeky about it. I think that's the next billion.
And to sort of riff on that, I pretty firmly believe that like your end user does not care what chain they're on. For people who are going to make up the majority of that next billion users, right? For people like us, yeah, we care about what chain it's on because that's what we care about. In the same way that someone who's into computers might care if you have an NVIDIA graphics card or an AMD graphics card. Most people just want to buy a console and play games. They don't care about what's happening under the hood. What the Superchain does is create an ecosystem where you can actually build meaningful things, leverage different chains for what they're good at, but create an ecosystem where innovation and healthy competition among chains is specifically designed, right? I see like the law of chains and these values that are baked into the Superchain, not just in vibes, but in, like written documents, sort of as like how we create a competitive atmosphere, right? Because a big part of what's written in the law of chains is about how you allow users to move between chains, how you allow chains to choose to stop operating if it's not in their incentive, right? And like the choices to do all that for chain operators, chain governors, and users all matter. Like we're all actors who have our own choices, and making sure that I, as an end user, get to do what's best for me is important, or for an app. For you to be able to move between chains to a chain that's better for you is a bigger incentive for better chains to be created, right? And that healthy competition where we don't have anti-competitive practices and are open to allowing other chains, encouraging other chains, and working together with other chains to create what's best for the end user is how we actually scale beyond a bunch of the nerds who care about the tech and are really excited about the chain, right? Because it really has to be just being excited about what it does for people.
Yeah, I think just to add on that, I'm kind of still a firm believer that like the end results, right? Like users wouldn't care what chain they're on, but like the end result has to be like a full package. It can't be like something that's stitched together. So when I started full-time in crypto, it's 2017, and I obviously was building on IBC, the Cosmos ecosystem, right? Like that's the only, because at the time you don't really have transaction that's less than like $1, which means like nothing can be built on a consumer level. So we had to build our own chain. We had to find our own validators. And then we had to do the whole thing that's not necessary to build an app. And now it's just very different, right? Like we want, one is like with the Superchain, one is that the tech stack is a lot unified, so you don't really get into like hacks that easily, or you don't really need to build your bespoke chain. And at the same time, as you said, really well, like it's a healthier competition between chains, but like you get to really own that final presentation. Like it's your own chain. You will be able to work on what kind of integration you have, what's the full package, like can users actually onboard it easily, and that's all being powered by a common stack, the OP stack, plus like all the incentives and the developer grants that we have from the Superchain support. Yeah, I think it's just the best of both worlds, right? Like, otherwise we will be all building another layer one. We will all be fighting for the validator and distributing tokens to validator, which just doesn't make sense anymore. Yeah. And under this framework, like we all can co-live and like the bridges between chains and the entire Superchain ecosystem have wide support for like the tech providers. And we have this future of interop coming out very soon. That's it's just like I can't wish for the best support out there. And end of the day, will be the 1 or 2 app that from every chain that really represent a chain. It's best success to like hit 1 billion users or whatever.
Nice, I love it. Yeah, I think it's something that we also did with Superchain.Eco. We made the database of all the chains, but then also highlight the kind of the biggest projects on there, because those kind of explain way better than a logo of a chain, kind of what you're doing, what you're caring about. Maybe to wrap it up, let's assume that this collaborative competition keeps going on. Tech gets better. We get a better feel of what the end user wants. If we fast forward, let's say 5 years from now, what do you think the experience is that your project can give to the end user? And how is that different from what you can give today?
I think that selecting what chain you're on becomes a thing of the past. Because a big part of what the Superchain's working on was the interoperability you mentioned, right? Where like, you can have something swap on one chain and have the next transaction in your app be on another chain, right? Or even to the point where like liquidity doesn't live on any one chain, it just lives on the Superchain. And when you can have chains that are suited to very specific needs of the ecosystem as a whole and common needs, but you're not locked into using that chain for everything else that you're doing, it just becomes a much better ecosystem, right? Because you're never locked into one chain. Everything happens on the chain that's best for it. Part of that healthy competition, you can specialize chains very heavily for different use cases behind the scenes. But to your end user, it's just an app. And it accomplishes what they want to accomplish.
What would that app accomplish from the Worldcoin perspective in a perfect world?
That is a great question. And I think from Worldcoin's perspective, I think that's tough for me to answer, because we're building World ID, which is this proof of personhood system for any app to use, right? There's plenty of things that we have available to users in our mobile application, World app, all of which today happen on Optimism. In the future will be on WorldChain. But the vast majority of those are pretty simple things, right? You can swap the currencies in your wallet, right? So it really comes down to whatever it is that users want to do on chain and what apps create for them to be able to do. Because the Superchain, as it is in 5 years, will remove so many barriers for things being built on chain that prevent them from being on chain today. And we'll see things come on chain because you get all the benefits of the permissionlessness of this decentralization without so many of the downsides that exist on chain today.
Yeah, I share. No, I think a lot of it, like we're all solving very base layer stuff, where like we're like with the ID and like with cyber, we're really just providing a lot of the infra for people to build. Like it's really hard to imagine what can be built in like 2.5 or 5 years. Again, it's best that we just stick together, work with the most talented developers out there, and trying to serve them the best we can. They will take care of the apps.
For me, I see that the various chains and new grants program that we support it sort of represent a new form of work, what the future of work could be like, how we think about projects, how we think about jobs, how we think about your day-to-day work. I think we're just scratching the surface of what that means with the various grants program and how people apply and so on. In the next 5 years, I certainly want to see a lot more like what working in Web3 could look like. And I think it'll be quite different than what we look at today.
Awesome. So essentially we're saying we want people to be on-chain without knowing it and get all the perks that we've created with our infrastructure and our crazy experiments. Awesome. I think we can leave it for there. Thank you guys so much for joining. Thanks all of you for staying till the end.